Thank you all. I also have to say, when we were doing our sing-along at the very beginning, I was laughing internally because just last night I had a dream that I was at a concert and the person on stage was having everybody sing along. And when they did that, I was the only person in the audience who went to sing along, and I discovered I had laryngitis. So I wasn't tempting fate this time. So it's a privilege to be here at school. I'm glad to see you all. So, on the first morning my family spent in our new rented house up at the top of Chesterfield Road here in Oakland, the steep, steep cobblestone street between Montefiore Hospital and Carlow College, some neighborhood kids set fire to our trash on their way to school. This is how we were welcomed to the neighborhood. Now, I have no idea if this was some sort of hazing ritual or a rite of passage, but I presume we passed the test. All the other fires that we managed to put out over the next 13 and a half years were mostly self-contained within the house and within our family dynamic. My family, my mother, my two younger sisters, and myself, we moved there because when I was 23, I was working two jobs and I paying the majority of our bills, and none of us drove. So I needed to find a place that was more convenient for me to get to my two jobs. And we had been living in Penn Hills at the time, and we got snowed in, and we discovered Chesterfield Road, which was roughly halfway between my two jobs. So many days I traveled down that hilly, bumpy street to return well after sundown, ready to collapse. The streets of Pittsburgh, because my family had migrated around Pittsburgh over the years, I tend to associate different streets with different stages of my life. Armandale Street on the north side. I associate that with being a carefree kid chasing fireflies with his friends in the summer. Shady Avenue in Squirrel Hill. I associate with being in my teens and full of energy and going to art school and having all sorts of zest for life. Chaskey Street in Penn Hills, I associate with some horrific winters here in Pittsburgh and being removed from the places I wanted and needed to be. So Chesterfield Road makes me think of working, which felt like all I ever did for years on end. I worked in town at a customer service job for so long that over a decade, I moved on from there, and former customers still recognize me and ask me if I still work there. They're obviously not paying attention. At the same time, I taught comic book classes and workshops at the Pittsburgh Center for the Arts, becoming very close friends with a number of the students and their parents to this day. In my rare free time, I also spent a lot of time working at my own artwork, trying to develop my career and working towards my goal as a professional working comics artist. I was young and focused and energetic, but all those trips up and down Chesterfield Road began making me tired. My family had endured numerous separations over the years during my childhood, with CYS repeatedly intervening to place my sisters and myself with family members and with foster parents. And I think that caused something to eventually click inside of all of us, and that made us stick together into adulthood far longer than most families do. As the de facto head of my household, the one with the biggest personality, and the one with the jobs, I was compelled to make a life for my family that was better than what we'd had before. It took tremendous effort, but I was able to pull my family off of the Section 8 program, wearing deeper grooves into Chesterfield's cobblestones with each trip to and from work. But the progress was slow, often imperceptible. At times when I was returning home from work, especially after long days having worked at both jobs, with customers and with students, Chesterfield Road at times began to feel almost like an antagonist. Walking up its cobblestones after 16 hours on my feet, the gravity somehow felt heavier than anywhere else in my life. And I wasn't seeing the progression towards my long-time goal of becoming a pro comic book artist anymore. And this weighed on me very heavily. After years of pulling myself up the hill, I wasn't just tired anymore. Now, I was weary, even fatigued. I imagined my life's journey to be like that of an ant attempting to scale Mount Kilimanjaro. Then one day, with that thinking in mind, I was motivated to do some math. I counted the mirror-like duplexes that lined the street from bottom to the top, up where we lived. Then I figured out how much distance I covered walking uphill from work each night. Then I averaged it out per week, and per month, and per year. And then I added it up. Then I looked up what was the actual height of Kilimanjaro from base to summit. So I could compare it to my total mileage walking home from work. Had I actually scaled the mountain without trying? Yes. In fact, over the course of 10 years worth of scaling Mount Chesterfield, I'd actually reached the summit of Kilimanjaro over 140 times. I did that math a few times to make sure I wasn't just seeing things. Now, this didn't necessarily make things better or easier for me, but it did help me gain perspective. What for years had felt like me failing to reach my goal and move forward had actually been me making incremental progress toward a long-range goal. As summarized by a friend one night as she dropped me off after spending an evening hearing my tales of woe, "Honey, you've been keeping people alive." And she was right. After a few more trips up the mountainside, I eventually moved from Chesterfield to share an apartment with a friend in Shadyside. Later, we moved to Lawrenceville, where I've been for almost a decade. My family still lives up on Chesterfield, though, and when I visit, climbing the streets isn't as difficult a task as you might think. Your body doesn't forget what it's been through, and it adapts. Years after leaving, my legs still find the rhythm and pace, and muscle memory takes over and allows me to attain the summit without a whole lot of effort. Chesterfield Road made me stronger than I ever thought I could be. Taking small steps like an ant, it's also able to lift far beyond its weight class. I'm happy to report that I am now an award-winning comic book artist with an actual paying job making comics with benefits. By my math, those numerous small steps for a Pittsburgh kid added up to a pretty big leap for a cartoonist kind in Pittsburgh. And I'm also happy to report that in all the years since, no one has set fire to my trash in any other neighborhood. I consider that an isolated incident. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.